Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to our panel. We are missing a couple people. They're having a little bit of technical difficulty, so we're going to let them in as time goes along here if they're able to join us. But I have the pleasure of being accompanied by Everett Ackerman, who is the HR Director and Principal Advisor for XNL HR and Communications, and he's been on a panel before and offers tremendous insight into everything HR. So thank you for being here, Evert. We really appreciate it. And I'm joined by Paula Fernandez, who's the Director of People and Culture from Drone Delivery Canada Corporation, who always has amazing insight to add to the conversation. So thank you so much to both of you for being here. Again, as I mentioned, we have three people that are having some technical difficulty. So we're working through that, and hopefully they can join the conversation as well. My name is Rachel Mitchell, and I'm the Director of Business Development for TorontoJobs.ca. And we're really happy that you could all join us. Thank you so much for being here. We've had some tremendous speakers that have talked about branding. They've talked about talent acquisition, what that looks like moving into 2022. I was mentioning in the opening remarks when we were doing this, when the pandemic first started, it was, I don't want to say it was negative, but it was a lot of uncertainty and a lot of people that didn't know, which direction to move in, and every day things were changing. And it seems like over the last couple months anyways, things have started to move in a positive direction, and we're all kind of forward thinking. And that's kind of the direction we want to take the panel today. So really excited that everyone could be here. Thanks for joining our event today. I want to say thanks to all of our sessions that happened before the panel. And I want to dive in. I want to get started. We have 30 minutes to cover a lot of questions and a lot of topics. And as I said, I really want to talk positively about strategies and hopefully you guys can take away a lot of information. I know Evert, he is an advisor and he works with a lot of different organizations. So he comes with a lot of different, outlooks and viewpoints. And Paula, your organization seems like the strategy and the structure is just so spot on. So really looking forward to you talking about that. So maybe right now we can talk a little bit about, what's changed in the last, 2 or 3 months, maybe with your clients, Everett and Paula, within your organization due to COVID. Like what are people returning back to the office? What is what does that look like? Do you have a policy? What have you implemented? And I know, Paula, you want to touch a little bit on vaccinations because that's been a big thing, and your organization's been diligently working on a policy for that. So maybe we'll start with you, Everett, and maybe you want to touch on, I know you're working with a lot of organizations. I'm sure you've helped them develop some back to work, plans and structures and things like that. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. And thanks very much, Rachel, for hosting this. And I'm really happy that you used the word positive there, because as everybody knows, it's been wall-to-wall doom and gloom for 18 months pretty much. And
yes.
When I'm in my car, I can't turn the dial fast enough to, avoid the topic of COVID. Apparently, there seems to be nothing else pretty much. So I'm really happy that things, at least they seem to be opening up. And that's definitely a positive. What I'm really happy about, of course, there was a lot of bad stuff that was prompted by COVID, but among the good things is that we finally proven the last holdouts wrong among supervisors and managers that insisted on seeing people in the office from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, at their desks, typing away or doing whatever they were supposed to do. And now what COVID has proven is that, we are all adults and we will all perform and the work will still get done. And from a number of my clients, I've actually heard that productivity has gone up because they no longer have to stop and talk all day long. So all of a sudden it's easier to meet deadlines. There's not a lot of distractions anymore. So yes, people are returning to work, but I'm really happy that in most cases, it's a hybrid model where, let's say 2 days, 3 days a week from home, and 1 or 2 days or 3 days in the office. And that seems to be working for most employees. Of course, it depends on the actual type of work, but I'm really happy to see that, the hybrid model is sort of the standard going forward. And I don't think that we'll ever be able to go back to that. So that's the vibe that I'm getting from my practice.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that you're absolutely right with the whole, productivity levels. I've seen so many studies, and so many clients have told me that productivity, like you're saying, has gone up, and people are happier. People are, coming. I know people are Zoom exhausted, but people are still coming on Zoom, and they feel, the feeling is just so much more positive that they're, able to throw a load of laundry in between meetings or something of that nature. It's all those things though help, right? They help tremendously in life. Life's a lot to deal with sometimes. So I've heard that a lot in terms of productivity. So Paula, maybe, same kind of along the same lines in terms of question, what has changed, within your organization in the last couple of months? I know you mentioned a vaccine policy. So maybe you can touch a little bit about that.
Sure. Thanks, Rachel, for having me again, and happy to be with Evert again on the same panel. So, it's been interesting. I think the last couple of months has definitely changed as far as a more positive outlook. We have I'd mentioned before on a previous panel, we had remained open. In certain roles where you were needed to be in the office, engineers that are doing testing, for example, in the lab, etc., they stayed, present here and on a hybrid model as well. So if they needed to be here, they were here. If not, then they were working remotely. And you had, other finance people, IT, etc., working, predominantly from home. So maybe coming in once a week or not at all. So it's been really a hybrid approach. I think what we started seeing is a lot of people asking us, what are we doing about vaccines? So not only internally, so we have a monthly communications meeting. And in that meeting, we have anonymous questions that people can pose, or not anonymous, up to them. But we were receiving questions about how are you protecting us? We were seeing that. We were also seeing clients asking us to say, if you're coming to the, onto our property, we want to make sure that your people are vaccinated. So that was interesting. So we put a vaccination policy together, and the way we looked at it is really dependent on the role again. So where people are working from home 100% of the time, we don't need you to be vaccinated. People that are seeing clients or alternatively coming in, if you have a medical exemption, obviously we're considering that. But otherwise, if you're not vaccinated, then you have to get tested once a week. So we've actually released that policy. And I think it, gives some reassurance to our employees that they feel more protected if people are actually having those tests. But our vaccination rate, which we do track, is 90%. So we're happy with that. And we do keep track of, not the vaccination records, but we are asking people to self-declare that they have been vaccinated. And I think that seems to be working well. Positivity, we had a Halloween dress up. So that was great. So for the first time, like last year, we didn't do anything. And we're planning some team events coming up. Teams are going out and doing either axe throwing or, different activities. Last year, we weren't talking about any of that. So that's the positive side of everything, which is, it's great to see it back.
It is great to see and be able to, we hired someone at the beginning of the pandemic, and I still haven't met them in person. It's very strange. You feel like you know someone, but you don't, you need that kind of in-person, face-to-face kind of thing to really connect with someone, I think, still. So that's nice that you guys are doing all those things. That's amazing. And your vaccination, I thought that it would be a little bit, it's a very sticky topic with, with people that don't want to get vaccinated or very, against it, and for their own reasons. And, each person can have their own, say in those things. But I think for employers, it's going to be very hard. It's nice to hear that yours was rolled out and it was efficient and effective and positive. But I could see some organizations really struggling with, if they have hundreds and hundreds of employees, creating a policy that works for everyone. So thanks for sharing that information. We really appreciate it. I'm going to let Samir in. I see him here now. He's, if that's okay.
Oh, hi.
Hi, we're glad you could make it.
Yeah, thanks. I was trying to, I had logged in. I was on the stage, but I don't know what happened.
That's okay. I think it was just sharing your audio video. We were just going through our first kind of set of questions here. But maybe you want to introduce yourself to everyone that's watching, and then we can go from there.
Okay, sure. Yeah, I'm Samir Kumar, and I work as Human Resources Manager in Rainy River First Nations. So we are located in Northwest Ontario.
That's great. That's great. I know you were on one of our job fair events. You're looking to hire and bring some, publicity and branding to Rainy River First Nations. So thanks for joining us today. We really appreciate it. We're on a different side of the spectrum today. So we were just actually talking about COVID and just trying to speak in a positive light about, things kind of opening up and returning to work and kind of what's changed and what that looks like for organizations. So I don't know if you want to also answer that question before we move on. Your perfect timing.
Yeah, because right here, presently we are looking at introducing a mandatory COVID vaccination policy for the employees. And so that's one of the challenge that we are facing. Although it's not implemented as yet, but we have to implement it. So that will be looking at the forms that have to be completed by the employees, providing them some accommodation if needed, based on a health reason or any other reason like religious reasons. So those are some of the challenges. And then if we do allow employees based on accommodation, then we have to look at testing, like how many times a week we have to do the testing of the employees who are not vaccinated. So that's some of the things we are looking at.
Yeah, it seems like that's something that most employers are looking at right now. Paula was just, I don't know if you heard Paula, but they have introduced a vaccine policy. So it's got to be challenging. I was saying it has to be very challenging for an organization to try to do it in a positive way so everyone feels still included and the culture still kind of sticks. So thank you for sharing that. I wanted to talk a little bit about something that's been in the news a lot and something that's come up in a lot of conversations I've had with clients. And Evert, maybe, we can start with you again, but the 4-day work week. So I've been hearing about this, kind of nonstop. I've seen it on a lot of different news outlets and things like that. So Evert, how do you feel about that? Are your clients talking about it, thinking about it? Have you, have any thoughts on it and how that could affect companies and their culture and, productivity, I guess?
No, I'm all for 4-day work weeks in terms of, like you mentioned, productivity. I think I just read the other week there was some survey or statistic that when people are at work, they are only productive for 3 hours in a day anyway. So if you can accommodate people's schedules by having them work 4 days, I've worked 4-day schedules myself. It just meant that the day was a bit longer, but it saves you so much time in terms of commutes, etc. And if you're at work, whether at home or actually on site, you may as well stay an extra hour or an hour and a half to get to, let's say, 37 and a half or 40, whatever it happens to be. To me, it only had benefits, and then of course also, if let's say you need to apply for a new driver's license or a passport or something, then you don't have to take time off. I only see benefits there. Of course, you don't make it mandatory, but if it's an optional thing, great. So no, my clients are not talking about it at this point, but if employees were to bring it up, I'm always perfectly happy to consider it and see if we can make it happen. Of course, that's a matter of does it is the company still able to service its customers and clients? That's always the key thing. But if it's not a customer-facing position, by all means. And speaking of vaccination, further to what Paula said, one of my clients has one employee who chose not to be vaccinated. I'm not sure what the reason was. I think it was medical. But this person was working part-time anyway and is in the role of bookkeeper. So the accommodation that my client arrived at in consultation with the employee is she comes in on weekends and does the work that needs to be done on site on weekends when nobody else is there. So no problem. So these things can all be talked about in conversations brought up, like how can we accommodate this? And if you can, great. And as long as you keep the conversation going and both sides are willing to meet, then accommodation is certainly possible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And welcome, Cheryl. Thanks for that, Everett. We've just kind of gone through a couple rounds of questions. We've been talking about vaccination policies, and we've been talking about now we're kind of onto the 4-day work week. So we're kind of making the rounds, but maybe you want to introduce yourself, and then we can maybe keep going with the conversation.
Sure. My name's Cheryl Sprole. I'm the former Director of Global Human Resources with Umbra in Toronto. And currently I am running my own private business coaching practice. On the 4-day week, that's an interesting one. It really is, because I think we really have to look at the whole issue of human productivity and, again, what makes sense for what job. I can think of some essential worker jobs, physical jobs where 4-day weeks probably wouldn't be a good idea. In the remote world, possibly. I think people are already working much longer hours anyway. So, I think what the pandemic has done is opened our eyes to what is possible. And so maybe it's time to revisit the 4-day work week. Who said there was anything sacrosanct about 40 hours, 5 days a week anyway? So.
Absolutely. We were talking a little bit earlier as well about, productivity and how working from home has, it's kind of decreased the commute times for people, and you can throw a load of laundry in between your meetings. And it's helped people be a lot more positive and a lot more happy and productive. And there's been studies and things that have shown that. So it's, I think we're learning a lot about, there's no rules about 40, it's how productive you can be in those 40 hours. So, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to pass it along to Paula, because I'm very interested to, you have people that are kind of engineers, and you've got sales and all these different, job kind of titles happening within your organization. So how do you feel about the 4-day work week?
Yeah, I mean, I think I tend to agree with Cheryl's initial comments. So we have very different roles. So as an example, we have safety pilots. So those are the pilots that are flying our drones so we have OCC operators that are flying our drones internally at our Vaughan Command Center, and they're actually restricted to a certain number of hours a day, and they need certain rest periods. So for them and for our safety pilots, that wouldn't work. I would say, again, back to whether it's finance or IT, like I think it really is just like the vaccination protocols would be role dependent. If you can manage to get your work done, I think the support would be there. And we do have flexible work hours. I'm just, it's almost like asking for an extended day for 4 days a week. So I think it's very possible in certain roles, and I think it's going to be supported in certain roles, but not all roles. And I'm thinking about it from a health and safety point of view. But at the end of the day, anything to make work more human, I think that's what people are referring to when we talk about working remotely or having more flexibility. That's what it's all about, and I think that's where it's heading towards, and that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, no, those are great points. Samir, I want to ask you, because I know you were on one of our job fair events recently. What's your biggest struggle right now in terms of recruitment? I know, we were talking a little bit backstage about, it's getting a little bit harder to find candidates, and I've been hearing that from clients as well. So, what are your kind of struggles? And then maybe you can talk a little bit about your strategies of how you're overcoming those struggles with hiring.
Well, for the current struggle for us is, of course, staffing. So staffing for some of the full-time positions. And that's primarily because of our location also. I think we are based in Northwest Ontario. And so that's been a big challenge for us. So we are trying to do some associations with some different organizations so that we overcome that. And we're looking at some relocation packages, which can be, motivating for the candidates to come here and work.
Are you able to hire people outside, or they have to be in your area? Like, are you doing remote work?
Yeah, we can hire from outside, but that's what the struggle is. That's the problem we are facing. For people who come from outside, say in a different city, they have to relocate to our region. So that's a big challenge also.
So that's a lot of brand effort on your part.
Yeah, we are looking at relocation package, giving some extra compensation. So we are changing the compensation package to look more attractive. So those are the things that we are planning to do. Yeah.
That's great. And Cheryl, maybe we can chat a little bit about that as well. I know you come from, kind of a corporate background, and now you're doing some business coaching. And I'm sure you have clients that are maybe struggling a little bit to fill some roles, maybe not. But I know that there's certain industries right now where it's really challenging to find staff. What are your kind of insights on how companies can brand their organizations or attract talent?
Well, right now it's funny. I'm actually doing a consulting assignment around international recruitment for Umbra. And I would say in the GTA, the job market is very hot. Candidates, it seems to be more candidates than opportunities. And if you're making an offer, I say go with your best offer because you won't get a second chance. So I think employers really need to sharpen their pencils and their elbows and be ready to compete. In terms of brand, I think, again, the watchword today is flexibility. Most, I think, companies are coming to the realization that they'll probably be on some sort of hybrid schedule for the near future. And that's causing some stress for individuals as they, it was funny, actually, stressful to go sort of all virtual. And now that we're going half virtual and half in office or in person, that's becoming a stress as well. So people are getting really change weary. I think from an employer's point of view, you want to make yourself as attractive as possible in terms of flexibility. I think that employers need to up their game around their ability to engage employees remotely, like through the screen as opposed to in person. And because otherwise people, you'll get the hire, but they won't stay because they don't feel connected to the organization. So big focus on onboarding in hybrid fashion, and then building those connections, those supports, and making sure people have the tools and the resources and the systems they need, whether they're working from home or whether they're in the office. It's made it much more challenging, I think, as an employer to attract people and keep them.
Absolutely. And Evert, kind of on that note, thank you so much for that insight, Cheryl. That was great. But Evert, on that note, kind of playing off what Cheryl was mentioning about, having to create a culture virtually and onboard virtually and making that connection so people stay. What are some strategies that you've given your clients for that whole virtual side of things, where I know I was mentioning I have employees I've maybe met once or twice or not met at all, over the pandemic. And it is tough. Like, you talk every day and you're on a screen, but you don't have that personal connection. So what are some strategies you give to your clients?
Yeah, it depends, of course, on what kind of work environment it is. But in the final analysis, like, we're all human, and despite or especially actually with COVID, we do crave that personal connection. So it's a matter of finding other ways to do it. Like you mentioned, or Paula mentioned a Halloween event maybe it was, I'm not sure whether it was on site or on screen, but to at least connect with people by creating some fun, bringing some a lighter note. Zoom calls definitely help. It's a substitute, but it works in many cases. And especially when it comes to onboarding, you have to really think about how you go about it and how do you relay that information, because some people need to job shadow, which is obviously not a possibility when you're, during a Zoom call, like, it's not hands-on. So it's just, it's a matter of thinking about it differently and finding out in each individual case, like, what works for people. How do they wish to connect? Do they want like a 3 times a day call in, or once a week? Is that enough? You have to figure out what kind of communication works for people. And for myself, when I present offers of employment and I check references, I always ask the person giving the reference, how do we make this person successful in this job? What can we do to make this person thrive? Like, does it have to be videos? Or does it have to be one-on-one? Does it have to be job shadowing? Is it, some people want to read manuals? So you usually get good feedback that way, and that helps my clients tailor their approach to the onboarding and ideally retention of new hires.
Yeah, no, that's great. We have about 5 minutes left, so I want to, Paula, maybe, do you want to touch on that as well, Paula?
Maybe just quickly, Samir, the first thing I want to say to you is we were hiring in BC lately, Fraser Lake up there, and then we had to also change our perspective and go with signing bonuses and relocation bonuses. So we quickly had to pivot with that. So the compensation was definitely changing. But I think from a point of view of connections and keeping people engaged, I think we've tried really hard this year to give our managers, because really it's not going to be HR. It's, it's not going to, the managers who manage their teams have to be close to their people. And I know it's not perfect, but, just reminding them, guys, check in on your teams, check in on your people, ask questions, trying to make a personal connection, anything that will help people stay engaged. And there are some really good, we sent a couple of our managers for some training on how to manage remote workers, because we know this is going to just, and as we're expanding across Canada as well, we know this is going to be more and more important to us.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. It's definitely a challenging challenging thing to do right now. That's for sure. I feel like retaining. I don't feel like a lot of people are really jumping around and moving around a lot. I feel like people are probably staying in their roles. It's a lot to leave virtually, as opposed to, so I find that might be a part of the shortage of candidates as well. So we have about 3 minutes left. I want to kind of go around and just maybe, your top advice. A lot of you are in positions of being HR leaders in your industry. All of you are. And, maybe if you want to talk about your biggest struggle and how you overcome it, or a strategy that you put into place, something that our listeners can kind of take away from today, and say, yeah, that's a great idea. We should implement that in our organization. So just one thing that you have that would be your biggest piece of advice for our audience, which is mostly HR directors, managers that are listening today. Yeah, Cheryl, go ahead.
Sure. So my big insight about the pandemic is it made the invisible visible. So as leaders, we didn't really appreciate in person how much information was absorbed by new hires, and how much bonding and emotional connection were created just by physical proximity. It's like fish being in water. I applaud Paula and her firm for investing in remote leadership training, we'll call it that, because suddenly you're not a manager, you're more like a TV talk host and keeping people engaged. It's a totally different skill set, much more intentional, and there are best practices, as Everett mentioned, and we just need to all up our game, quite frankly, as a result.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great piece of advice, that's for sure. How about you, Samir?
Yeah, I agree with Cheryl on that point. Well, of course, for me, it has been like I've explored different avenues for, for getting the best candidates or staffing the positions in this present situation of pandemic. So like we have looked at doing associations with different organizations, going to outreach organizations, which was not done earlier. So those avenues we have searched, and we have gone to them. So yeah, that would I think that would benefit in the future.
There's a lot of great resources out there and associations, kind of for every industry. There's sales, there's engineering, and definitely they're there for that kind of support. So that's great. How about you, Evert?
Yeah, I think that in terms of the tips, advice for people in HR, business owners, managers, I think that we haven't even begun to see the impact, the fallout of COVID and being remote, people being forced apart, on people's well-being and mental health. And I think that it really makes sense for employers this is the time to invest in EAPs and to really think about how do we, because the focus in media and government seems to be on physical health. As long as we're not sick, everything's okay. Seems to have been the approach over the past 18 months. As long as you're not infected, you're good. I think that's too narrow a vision. Everything's interconnected, so we have to really focus on employees' well-being and mental health and their comfort going forward. Because it's not just, flexibility is an important thing, but also people have to be comfortable in the work they do, in the culture they operate in, and the company that they want to contribute to. And I think the fallout will be with us for years to come. Unfortunate, but it's a reality.
I agree. That's a great point. And we're right at 4 o'clock. So Paula, last piece of advice.
Yeah, I mean, just for all the HR people, because I can feel it myself, is just to look after yourself as well, because it's been a really, really tough time, and I don't see the end. I mean, I see the end, but I don't. So, like, even just going around and listening to everybody, there's other challenges we're facing with, and I think HR needs to look after themselves as well.
I agree. It's been so many changes, and I'm sure you've had to change your strategies and your policies a million times during the pandemic. We're open, we're closed, you can only have so many people here. And then it's probably just been, I said it in the opening remarks, like kudos to everyone that works in HR, because it's, balancing just the strategies and the information and what things that the government's releasing and the capacity limits and all those things is enough to deal with. And on top of that, you're dealing with your staff, protecting them and keeping them safe, and having to keep up with all the policies that need to be in place so they understand what's happening in your workplace. So yeah, I think HR has probably been one of the toughest probably roles to have during notwithstanding healthcare.
Yeah, our nurses and our doctors.
Yeah, no, I'm not taking away from any of those things, but it's been up there, with being very stressful, and I agree with you, and that's a great way to end today is kudos, and everyone should give themselves a break, and like you're saying, really be proud of yourselves for what you've accomplished over the last, oh my gosh, we're going into almost 2 years. So I just want to thank you all for being here. Sorry, there was a little technical difficulties at the beginning. I think we had a great conversation. I think you guys all contributed some amazing, points and strategies and tips that people can really think about and take away today. I really want to thank you all for your time. I know it's not easy to take 30 minutes out of your day, especially working and wearing an HR hat. So really appreciate that. I appreciate the time of all of our section speakers today. The topics were phenomenal. Really appreciate that. And to all of the people for attending, really appreciate everyone being here. So again, we are TorontoJobs.ca. We're hosting the event today. We have an online job board. We do offer recruitment services. We are kind of all things GTA. We've been around for 15 years, built quite the database and community. And during the pandemic, our kind of role has really been to help people and put out as many resources as possible. There's been a lot of job seekers been affected by this. A lot of employers been affected, and our job was always just to keep connecting. So we used to do these live events. Now we do them virtually. We really want to keep connecting people. So we really appreciate you being here. We are online at TorontoJobs.ca. We have an amazing social media presence. We post a lot of article content and things like that. So you can follow us on social media. And TorontoJobs.ca/news is where you'll find all of our upcoming events. So if you're interested in any upcoming events or webinars, we host them quite regularly. So just want to say thank you very much again to everyone, and have a great afternoon, and thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.